Here we have some frogman gear, modern mask. Suit there, got marked. This is called a rebreather. There's the fins. They look pretty badass. You can probably swim about 40 miles an hour with them. The attack board, which I'm not sure what the use for that is. Closed circuit mixed gas rebreather. These are all things to go underwater. Modified life jacket. There's a weight belt. Twin aluminum non-magnetic tanks with aqua and 2-stage regulator. Don't want to be magnetic. Immersion closed circuit rebreather. The Cold War. This was my era of the service. So as you discover more about the Navy SEALs' involvement in Cold War, we'll learn about the adaptive skills that led to their many successful missions. The Cold War, a conflict primarily between the U.S. and the USSR, began after World War II in 1947. The Soviets implemented the communist form of government in lands they had liberated from Nazi control. Western allies feared that the Soviet Union would use force to expand communism and its influence in Europe. Allies were especially concerned that Soviet agents had obtained information on making the atom bomb. For many, the fear of nuclear annihilation was a major concern during the Cold War. Some believed that the policy of mutually assured destruction, MAD, kept the conflicts from escalating into actual combat. And this is the era, not the 40s, the 70s, that I trained in the service in. Here's a little board here that you can put your face in the hole and take a picture. Okay, these are some of the missions that have been done. This is Bosnia. Objective, find and apprehend war criminals. Capture Balaji Simic. Location, Bosnia. Navy SEALs operated alongside other members of NATO's infiltration force, such as Delta Force and British. These units were tasked with finding and apprehending persons indicted for war crimes and sending them to The Hague, Netherlands, to stand trial. I'm going to read it all here. In February 1998, Navy SEALs apprehend Balaji Simic, dubbed the Hitler of Bosnia. The SEALs successfully conducted a clandestine mission capturing Simic, but they were delayed upon extraction by an improper paramilitary checkpoint. After ramming the checkpoint barricade with their car, then swapping cars in the countryside, they sped to a secret airfield where Simic was picked up and flown to The Hague to await trial for crimes against humanity. Operation Uphold Democracy. Mission area. Objectives to remove military regime, restore and maintain peace in Haiti. Invasion averted. In September 1994, the U.S. intervened in Haiti to remove the military regime installed during the 1991 Haitian coup d'etat that overthrew President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. The mission was named Operation Uphold Democracy and lasted from September 19, 1994 to March 31, 1995. The invasion was to be a forcible entry, but it was averted at the very last minute, with the main force of the invasion just hours from reaching Haiti. Some advanced elements had already infiltrated. An agreement was reached with the leaders of Haiti to step down and depart the country. The elected officials, including President Aristide, were allowed to return. Aircraft carrier here. This next one here is Operation restore hope. Objectives is to hunt and capture Mohammed Farah Hadid in Somalia. Firefight, one of the bloodiest battles in decades and lasting more than 17 hours, resulted in the deaths of 18 American soldiers and more than 500 local Somali militia and citizens. That's the way we do it. The U.S. entered Somalia, Africa in December of 1992 to stop imminent starvation of hundreds of thousands of people. In August of 1993, a four-man Naval Special Warfare Development Group SEAL sniper team was deployed to Mogadishu to join Task Force Rangers in the search for Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Hadid, who was responsible for the killing and mutilation of multiple Pakistani peacekeepers. The Battle of Mogadishu, more commonly known as Black Hawk Down, began on October 3, 1993, when members of the Task Force Ranger received information that some of Hadid's lieutenants were meeting in a house next to the Olympic Hotel in downtown Mogadishu. What ensued after the launch of the raid turned out to be the most intensive urban combat by Americans since the Vietnam War. The firefight, one of the bloodiest battles in decades and lasting more than 17 hours, resulted in the death of 18 American soldiers, 500 Somalis.
We're at that Navy, the museum, and there's this whole section.
Buoys. Excuse me. The next one here is Operation Snowcat. These guys are busy. The objective is to stop the flow of cocaine into the United States. Train host countries' law enforcement and military, set up ambush sites on airstrips. Location is Bolivia. Interdict the flow of drugs. SEAL Team 4 deployed units throughout South America in support of the U.S. Indian Ridge counter-drug strategy, launched in 1987 by the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, and the Department of State's Bureau's International Narcotics Matters, and Operation Snowcat was intended to disrupt the cultivation, manufacture, and distribution of cocaine in several South American countries. Navy SEAL detachments spent 3.5 months in South America training foreign counterparts and local law enforcement officials in riverine operations and small unit tactics. Naval Special Warfare has had a long history of action in Central and South America. Navy SEALs took part in operations attempting to capture such notables as guerrilla warfare leader Che Guevara and drug lord Pablo Escobar. Always pride in their units. Some of our things: chemical protection smock, nerve agent antidote kit, decontamination kit. This is all for the nastiest of warfare. Gas mask. Okay, this is Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Most of us know about this to free Kuwait. Stop Saddam Hussein. I'm not going to go into detail on this one. I think this one's recent enough. We all know what happened here. Desert patrol vehicle with mounted .50 caliber machine gun. I've shot those. A hell of a machine gun. Naval Special Warfare Force that operated out of Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War. Desert Shield and Desert Storm from August 1990 to March 1991. This photo was taken at the final task group location at Ras Al Ghar, Saudi Arabia, shortly after the end of the war, sometime in March 1991. A lot of men there. We train for war and we fight to win. I stand ready to bring the full spectrum of combat power to bear in order to achieve my mission and the goals established by my country. The execution of my duties will be swift and violent when required, yet guided by the very principles. Some devastation here. Captured Iraqi flag. Captured Iraqi ammo pack. This appears that it's all Iraqi stuff. Gas mask. Rucksack. Hand grenade. Tank helmet. Iraqi uniform. Ammo belt with canteen, ammo pack, French rebreather, Panamanian Defense Forces here. During Operation Just Cause, seals for values and searching master against. Here we have Operation Just Cause. Objective is to prevent Noriega's escape, disable gunboat in Balboa Harbor, and disable Learjet at Ayatollah Airfield in Panama. I did jungle training in Panama about 1980 or 81, I think. The United States invaded Panama in an attempt to overthrow military dictator Manuel Noriega. Noriega had been indicted in the U.S. states on drug trafficking charges and was accused of suppressing democracy in Panama as well as endangering U.S. nationals. President Bush authorized the U.S. invasion of Panama to overthrow Noriega. Codename Operation Just Cause. That's that up there. The wood plank. Is that right there? Taken from.
Although I failed to mention.
Taken from destroyed Panamanian gunboat Presidente Porras during the ST-2 Balboa Harbor combat mission. Again, here's some mask and fins, a little bit different. Map showing the Patilla Airfield in Panama. The President from George H.W. Bush expressing his sorrow and pride for the 4 Navy SEALs who were killed in Operation Just Cause.
I remember I was on Swift and it said I had all this stuff that was and there's like 20 all on the same day.
Okay, if you're gonna go deer hunting, this is your gun right here. This is a Chinese Type 54 heavy machine gun. See, I didn't recognize it to be anything that I've ever seen in the military, so that's why. Captured Iranian flag. And our next mission here is Operation Earnest Will, Prime Change, and Praying Mantis. Capture oil platforms and enemy vessels. Location, the Persian Gulf. Again. Operation Earnest will begin 3 years into the tanker war phase of the Iran-Iraq War on July 24th, 1987, and lasted until September 26, 1988. The mission was to protect U.S. flag tankers from Iranian naval attacks while being escorted through the Persian Gulf. The operation was put into place after the U.S. flag Kuwait oil tanker Bridgeton struck an Iranian underwater mine. Medical kit. Looks like you can pretty much do field surgery with this. There's a lot of stuff in it. This is Operation Fury. Objective is to capture radio station, rescue governor, island of Grenada. Students being rescued by soldiers look on during Operation Urgent Fury, Grenada. Students being rescued while soldiers look on. Again. This next one is Operation Eagle Claw. Hostage rescue, U.S. Embassy, Tehran, Iran. On November 4th, 1979, as many as 3,000 militant Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, taking 63 American hostages. This is while I was in. In April 1980, President Carter, frustrated with the slow pace of diplomacy and over the objection of several of his advisors, decided to launch a risky military rescue mission known as Operation Eagle Claw. The operation was supposed to send an elite rescue team into embassy compound, but during the infiltration into Iran, a severe desert sandstorm caused several helicopters to malfunction. Once a number of functional helicopters fell below the required number, the mission was aborted. During helicopter refueling in the Iranian desert, codenamed Desert One, a repositioning helicopter veered into a large transport plane with catastrophic results. 8 American servicemen were killed in the accident. The remainder of the forces quickly departed Iran, and the president publicly took responsibility for the mission failure the following day. The mission, although a courageous endeavor, was a failure and highlighted the inter-service deficiencies in equipment and training within the U.S. military command structure. The tragedy of Operation Eagle Claw also emphasized the necessity of joint planning and training. This operation led to the establishment of the Joint Special Operations Command and the development of the elite counterterrorism force, SEAL Team 6. Okay, looks like we have demolitions expert here. This is underwater demolitions. Blasting machine. Compass used for navigation and location. Korean money. A cat blasting machine known as the Hellbox. This is a US 10 cat blasting machine nicknamed the Hellbox. Is a handheld detonator used to initiate many types of electronic blasting caps. Some things down there. There's a web utility belt, his knife. Korean War. Expanded mission capabilities. After World War II, the underwater demolition teams and UDTs put their skills to test in the Korean War. During the evacuation of Korean civilians in the Marine Division from Hungnam, Bravo detachment of UDT-3 wired and detonated over 20 tons of explosives around the harbor in a single shot. The explosion destroyed docks, buildings, supplies, and any material not evacuated by the Marines. It is still a record today for the largest detonation by man-fused munitions. Big picture here. Ammo box there. Some of the weapons. Scope. German loader. Walther P-38. Russian TT-33. MAC-10. North Vietnamese AK-47 assault rifle, M79 grenade launcher, big tube on the end there, Smith & Wesson Model 76, this big night vision scope. I'm sure that's mounted on mounted equipment and not something you're going to mount on your rifle. There's the NASA space program that the SEALs also were involved in. The SEALs are what recover the Apollo from the sea. Of course, the Navy. 2 UDT swimmers recovering a Project Gemini space capsule. Pacific Ocean, men of UDT-11 and UDT-12 performed their tasks as the Apollo command module awaits recovery aboard the amphibious assault ship USS New Orleans on July 24, 1975. Gold foil from Apollo 13. An explosion in one of the oxygen tanks crippled the Apollo 13 spacecraft during flight, and the crew was forced to return to Earth without landing on the moon. UDT-13 was there to safely recover the astronauts and the spacecraft. Launch date 11 of April 1970. UDT Recovery Team wetsuit. Worn by then Lieutenant David R. Kohler during the Apollo-Soyuz test project, the first cooperative U.S.-Soviet space mission. The Apollo-Soyuz command module was covered in the Pacific near Hawaii on July 24, 1975. This was the last manned spacecraft ocean splashdown UDT recovery, as the NASA Apollo program was soon replaced by the Space Shuttle. This is impressive. In 1984, William M. Bill Shepard became the first Navy SEAL selected for the NASA program. He was a veteran of 4 space flights, logging over 159 days in space. On October 31st, 2000, Soyuz spacecraft Expedition 1 lifted off from Kazakhstan. On board were Expedition 1 Commander Bill Shepard and 2 cosmonauts. The trio arrived at the International Space Station on November 2nd, making the start of a continuous human presence on the orbiting laboratory. In May of 2004, Chris Cassidy became the second Navy SEAL to be selected by NASA. In July 2009, mission specialist Cassidy boarded the Space Shuttle Endeavour flight STS-127. He logged in over 376 hours in space, including 18 hours and 5 minutes of extravehicular activity in 3 spacewalks. Among his other accomplishments, Cassidy served as the chief of the astronauts, which was the most senior leadership position for active astronauts at NASA. Look at this. This is vacuum-packed shrimp cocktail, and man, it looks nasty. But this is what they ate. 3 ounces of cold water for 10 to 15 minutes, and shrimp. It's a Navy SEAL memorial coin. See, this is really interesting here. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy called on the armed services to develop an unconventional warfare capability. Harley Burke and the U.S. Navy responded immediately, and in January of 1962 commissioned SEAL Team 1 on the West Coast and SEAL Team 2 on the East Coast. These new SEAL teams were named after the elements in which they were required to operate: sea, air, and land. The initial team members, or plank owners, were picked from the ranks of existing underwater demolition teams. Their mission was to conduct counter-guerrilla warfare and clandestine operations in maritime and riverine environments. The newly formed SEAL teams soon saw action in Vietnam and earned the reputation as fierce, highly skilled, and feared warriors, a reputation that continues to this day. Since their creation, U.S. Navy SEALs have nobly and honorably defended our nation in every conflict in all regions of the globe. President Kennedy. President John F. Kennedy chats with members of the newly formed Navy SEAL Team 2, April 13th, 1962.
Oh my God.
These are the SEAL Team 1 plank owners. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll try to get close enough here and you can. Place is permanently sketched in history. And then we're here at SEAL Team 2, January 8th, 1962. Let's get closer here. Sorry about the unsteadiness. Crisis in Cuba. January 1st, 1959, a Cuban insurgent named Fidel Castro drove his guerrilla army into Havana and overthrew the nation's American-backed president, General Fulgencio Batista. Castro, a Soviet-aligned communist, immediately took action to reduce American economic influence in Cuba. After 2 years attempting to push Castro from power, the U.S. government developed full plans for a full-scale attack. Funded by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, 1,400 Cubans who had fled the country when Castro took over were trained by the U.S. military, including UDTs, to overthrow Castro by force. During an attack at the Bay of Pigs, the exiles were greatly outnumbered and forced to surrender within 24 hours. Further attempts were made to overthrow Castro between 62 and 65. In covert missions under the name Operation Mongoose, SEAL Teams 1 and 2, as well as UDTs, had involvement in these clandestine operations, which are still classified secret today. President Kennedy. Special Atomic Demolition Munition. During the Cold War, the U.S. military developed a Special Atomic Demolition Munition, which was intended for use in Soviet-occupied Western Europe to prevent the Soviets from acquiring critical assets or for crippling elements of any Soviet invasion force. This tactical small-yield atomic munition D-54 backpack nuke measured approximately 10.5 inches in diameter by 15.5 inches long and weighed around 50 pounds. With an explosion equivalent of between 10 tons and 1 kilo. It's a little hard for me to see, it's in black and white.
During preparation of the munition allows the swimmers time to make a safe escape. After turning the external arming mechanism, which starts timer rundown, the swimmers move out. They quickly move to the
Standing up in the back of your neck.
Frogman movie poster. I guess I never saw the Frogman. It's a difficult wall here, the Medal of Honor. Special Operation. Life above and beyond the call of duty as a hostage rescue force team member in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom from 8 to 9 December 2012. As the rescue force approached the target building, an enemy sentry detected them and darted inside to alert his fellow captors. The sentry quickly re-emerged and the lead assaulter attempted to neutralize him. Chief Byers with his team sprinted to the door of the target building. As the primary breacher, Chief Byers stood in the doorway fully exposed to the enemy fire while ripping down 6 layers of heavy blankets fastened to the inside of the ceiling walls to clear a path for the rescue force. The first assaulter pushed his way through the blankets and was mortally wounded by enemy small fire from within. Chief Byers, completely aware of the imminent threat, fearlessly rushed into the room and engaged an enemy guard aiming an AK-47 at him. He then tackled another adult male who had darted toward the corner of the room. During the ensuing hand-to-hand struggle, Chief Byers confirmed the man was not the hostage and engaged him. As other rescue team members called out to the hostage, Chief Byers heard a voice respond in English and raced toward it. He jumped atop the American hostage and shielded him from high volume of fire within the small room. While covering the hostage with his body, Chief Byers immobilized another guard with his bare hands and restrained the guard until a teammate could eliminate him. His bold and decisive actions under fire served the lives of the hostage. It's hard. Several of his teammates, by his undaunted courage and intrepid fight, to prevent unwavering devotion to duty in the face of near certain death, Chief Petty Officer Byers reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Michael Monsoor, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as automatic weapons gunner for Naval Special Warfare Task Group, Arabian Peninsula in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom on 29 September 2006. As a member of a combined SEAL and Iraqi Army sniper overwatch element tasked with providing early warning and standoff protection from a rooftop. Let's get a good picture of him. Petty Officer Mansour distinguished himself by exceptional bravery in the face of grave danger. In the early morning, insurgents prepared to execute a coordinated attack by reconnecting the area around the element's position. Element snipers thwarted the enemy's initial attempt by eliminating 2 insurgents. The enemy continued to assault the element, engaging them with rocket-propelled grenade and small arms fire. As enemy activity increased, Petty Officer Mansour took position with his machine gun between 2 teammates on an outcropping of the roof, while the SEALs vigilantly watched for enemy activity, and insurgent threw a hand grenade from an unseen location, which bounced off Petty Officer Mansour's chest and landed in front of him. Although only he could have escaped the blast, Petty Officer Mansour chose instead to project his teammates instantly, and without regard for his own safety, he threw himself onto the grenade to absorb the force of the explosion. With his body, saving the lives of 2 teammates. By this undaunted courage, fighting spirit, and unwavering devotion to duty in the face of certain death, Petty Officer Mansour gallantly gave his life for his country, therefore reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. This next one is really hard. Lieutenant Michael Murphy. For conspicuous gallantry and integrity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty as leader of a special reconnaissance element of Naval Special Warfare Task Unit Afghanistan on 27 and 28 June of 2005. While leading a mission to locate a high-level anti-coalition militia leader, Lieutenant Murphy demonstrated extraordinary heroism in the face of grave danger in the vicinity of Asadabad, Konar Province, Afghanistan. On 28 June 2005, operating in an extremely rugged enemy-controlled area, Lieutenant Michael Murphy's team was discovered by an anti-coalition militia sympathizers who revealed their position to Taliban fighters. As a result, between 30 and 40 enemy fighters besieged his 4-member team. Demonstrating exceptional resolve, Lieutenant Murphy valiantly led his men in engaging the large enemy force. The ensuing fierce firefight resulted in numerous enemy casualties as well as wounding of all 4 members of the team. Ignoring his own wounds and demonstrating exceptional composure, Lieutenant Murphy continued to lead and encourage his men. When the primary communicator fell mortally wounded, Lieutenant Murphy repeatedly attempted to call for assistance for his beleaguered teammates, realizing the impossibility of communicating in the extreme terrain, and in the face of almost certain deaths, he fought his way into an open terrain to gain a better position to transmit a call. This deliberate heroic act deprived him. I can't read this. This deliberate heroic act deprived him of cover, exposing him to direct enemy fire. Finally achieving contact with his headquarters, Lieutenant Murphy maintained his exposed position while he provided his location and requested immediate support for his team. In his final act of bravery, he continued to engage the enemy until he was mortally wounded, gallantly giving his life for his country and for the cause of freedom. By his selfless leadership, courageous actions, and extraordinary devotion to duty, Lieutenant Murphy reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. It's really hard. Lieutenant Thomas R. Norris. It's more Vietnam era, I think. For conspicuous gallantry and integrity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while completing an unprecedented ground rescue of 2 downed pilots deep within heavily controlled enemy territory in Quai Tri province from 10 to 13 April 1972, Lieutenant Norris went on the night of 10 April led a 5-man patrol through 2,000 meters of heavily controlled enemy territory, located one of the downed pilots at daybreak, and returned to the forward operating base. On the 11th of April, after devastating mortar and rocket attack on the small FOB, Lieutenant Norris led a 3-man team on 2 unsuccessful rescue attempts for the second pilot. On the afternoon of the 12th, a forward air controller located the pilot and notified Lieutenant Norris. Dressed in fisherman disguises and using a sampan, Lieutenant Norris and 1 Vietnamese traveled through the night and found the injured pilot at dawn. Covering the pilot with bamboo and vegetation, they began the return journey, successfully evading the North Vietnamese patrol. Approaching the FOB, they came under heavy machine gun fire. Lieutenant Norris called in an airstrike which provided suppression fire and a smoke screen, allowing the rescue party to reach the FOB. By his outstanding display of decisive leadership, undaunted courage, and selfless dedication to duty in the face of extreme danger, Lieutenant Norris enhanced the finest traditions of the United States Naval Service. This is by Gerald Ford. Engine Man Second Class, Michael E. Thornton. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while participating in a daring operation against enemy forces on 31 October 1972, Petty Officer Thornton, as Assistant U.S. Navy Advisor, along with U.S. Lieutenant serving as Senior Advisor, accompanied a 3-man Vietnamese Navy SEAL patrol on an intelligence gathering and prisoner capture operation against an enemy-occupied naval river base. Launched from a Vietnamese Navy junk in a rubber boat, the patrol reached land and was continuing on foot towards its objective when it suddenly came under heavy fire from a numerically superior force. The patrol called in naval gunfire support and then engaged the enemy in a fierce firefight, accounting for many enemy casualties before moving back to the waterline to prevent encirclement. Upon learning that the senior advisor had been hit by enemy fire and was believed to be dead, Petty Officer Thornton returned through a hail of fire to the lieutenant's last position, quickly disposed of 2 enemy soldiers about to overrun the position, and succeeded in removing the seriously wounded and unconscious senior naval advisor to the water's edge. He then inflated the lieutenant's life jacket and towed him seaward for approximately 2 hours until picked up by the support craft. By this extraordinary courage and preservation, Petty Officer Thornton was directly responsible for saving the life of a superior officer and enabling the safe extraction of all patrol members, therefore upholding the highest traditions of the U.S. Naval Service. Richard Nixon. Lieutenant Junior Grade Joseph R. Curry. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity. Let's get the picture. Beyond the call of duty while serving as a SEAL team leader during action against enemy aggressor Viet Cong forces 14 March 1969. Acted in response to reliable intelligence, Lieutenant Carey led his SEAL team on a mission to capture important members of the enemy's area political cadre known to be located on the island in the Bay of Nahatang. In order to surprise the enemy, he and his team scaled a 350-foot sheer cliff to place themselves above the ledge on which the enemy was located. Splitting his team in two elements and coordinating both, Lieutenant Carey led his men in a treacherous downward descent to the enemy's camp. Just as they neared the end of their descent, intense enemy fire was directed at them, and Lieutenant Carey received massive injuries from a grenade, which exploded at his feet and threw him backward onto the jagged rocks. Although bleeding profusely and suffering great pain, he displayed outstanding courage and presence of mind, immediately directing his element's fire into the heart of the enemy camp. Utilizing his radio man, Lieutenant Carey called in a second element's fire support, which caught the confused Viet Cong in a devastating crossfire. After successfully suppressing the enemy fire, and although immobilized by his multiple wounds, he continued to maintain calm, superlative control and ordered his team to secure and defend an extraction site. Lieutenant Carey resolutely directed his men despite his near unconscious state until he was eventually evacuated by helicopter. Say, well, can you see this reads to Japan? Operation Crossroads. Objectives: investigate effective nuclear weapons on warships, operate and maintain Bikini Atoll. I don't know about this. Frog Run support nuclear tests. Operation Crossroads involved 2 nuclear weapons tests conducted by the United States at Bikini Atoll in mid-1946. They were the first nuclear weapon tests since Trinity in July of 1945 and the first detonation of nuclear devices since the atomic bombing of Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945. The purpose of the test was to investigate the effect of nuclear weapons on warships. UDT-3 personnel were responsible for the operation and maintenance of the landing craft vehicle. Personnel drone boats were used to collect water samples from the immediate vicinity of the nuclear detonation. Cast and recovery. Here's a little kind of cool thing here. Cast and recovery diorama. The cast and recovery method to deployment and recovering SEALs from water was developed by the underwater demolition team during World War II and is still used by SEALs today. This dynamic insertion extraction method was developed to make it harder for enemy gunners to hit swimmers and boats in the water. To execute the deployment, an inflatable boat, small IBS, is attached to a power boat that speeds along offshore at up to 20 knots. The SEALs jump from the powerboat to the IBC in rapid succession and cast themselves into the water to form a straight line by rolling the IBS while holding their face masks. The recovery works in reverse. Each SEAL prepares to pick up by raising one arm and kicking hard with the spin to lift himself high in the water. A SEAL in an ABS towed by a powerboat at approximately 15 knots and recovers the SEAL in the water by using a rubber hook called a snare to catch them by the arm in order to haul them aboard one by one. That's what this is here. Let's see if we can get a little better lighting. It's just a big ring. There's a picture of it being used. And again. Are you guys all through? Instrument of surrender. This is, we hereby proclaim the unconditional surrender to the Allied powers of the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters and all Japanese armed forces and all armed forces under Japanese control wherever situated. We hereby command all Japanese forces wherever situated and Japanese people to cease hostilities forthwith, to preserve and save from damage all ships, aircraft, and military and civil property, and to comply with all requirements which may be imposed by the Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers or by agencies of the Japanese government. So this is a little shadowy here, but this is the instrument of surrender. September 2nd, 1945. Japanese representatives signed the official instrument of surrender, bringing the hostilities of World War II to a close. There's a whole another room in there. A total of 30 100-man underwater demolition teams were formed during World War II, with only 4 teams surviving during the post-war period. UDT 1 and 3 were home ported in Coronado, California, and organized under Amphibious Forces Pacific. UDT 2 and 4 were sent to Little Creek, Virginia, and organized under Amphibious Forces Atlantic. After the Korean War, these teams became UTD 11, 12, 21, and 22. In 1962, the first SEAL teams were selected and commissioned from UDT personnel. Both SEALs and UDTs served in the Vietnam War. In 1983, all UDTs were decommissioned and redesignated SEAL and SEAL delivery vehicle teams.
Program.
Tried it there on this chest in here, which this is the UTD fatigues before the SEALs, and this is the same man now that he's a SEAL. It's a little bit different uniform, different insignia here. Naval Amphibious Base, Fort Pierce, which is where we're at right now. You are currently standing on the hallowed ground of the birthplace of the Navy SEAL. This land, once known as Naval Amphibious Base, Fort Pierce, was the original training site for predecessor unit of today's Navy SEALs. These units included the Naval Combat Demolition Units, Underwater Demolition Teams, Scouts and Raiders, and Office of Strategic Services Maritime Units. Names can change over time, but there is one term that identifies all men from these units: frogmen.
Gentlemen, how are you? Well, sir. Welcome to World War II and the birthplace and the beginning of Navy's missile warfare.